There comes a moment after awakening when everything goes still. The fire that once pushed you, the goals, the urgency, the endless drive to achieve, suddenly fades into silence. You wake up one morning and realize that the things that used to matter don't move you anymore. The ambition that once defined you now feels empty. It's disorienting, this quiet. You used to measure your worth through progress, productivity, validation. Now even effort feels forced. You start to wonder, have I lost myself? Have I burned out? But this stillness isn't failure. It's a deep spiritual reset. When you awaken, life strips you of artificial motives. The desires built on fear, ego, and approval no longer have power over you. It's not that you've lost motivation, it's that your old fuel source no longer works. This chapter of your journey is about remembering a different kind of drive, one that comes not from striving, but from being. The stillness that feels like emptiness is actually space being cleared for a new purpose to rise, one rooted not in ambition, but in alignment. Sometimes the soul must empty itself completely before it remembers what truly moves it. 1. Because the old goals lose meaning. There's a moment after awakening when the drive that once burned inside you begins to flicker out. The goals you chased for years, success, status, validation, suddenly lose their power. You look at the life you've built and wonder why it no longer excites you. The trophies feel empty, the praise feels shallow, and the chase feels meaningless. It's not that you've become lazy. It's that you've begun to see through the illusion that once kept you moving. Before awakening, ambition was fueled by lack, by the belief that something outside yourself could complete you. You wanted to prove, to earn, to be seen. You ran toward everything that promised significance, but beneath it all was an unconscious hunger for peace. Now, awakening has shown you that peace can't be found through achievement. It's already here, beneath the noise, beneath the striving. And that realization makes old goals feel like shadows of a former life. You can't force yourself to care about what your soul has outgrown. The mind tries to rebel. It whispers, you're wasting time. You're falling behind. But for the first time, you see that falling behind is only real in the illusion of competition. You are no longer chasing someone else's timeline. You're learning to move by rhythm, not pressure. The emptiness that follows awakening isn't failure. It's space, the space where false ambition dies and authentic desire is born. But before that rebirth, you must face the void. It's uncomfortable to no longer know what drives you. You may feel detached, uninspired, even lost. Yet, this loss of direction is not the end of purpose. It's the clearing that allows a deeper one to emerge. You start to notice that when you stop striving, something softer arises: curiosity. Instead of asking, what can I get? You begin to ask, what can I create? What can I give? Your actions stop coming from scarcity and start flowing from alignment. You no longer chase meaning, you become it. This is the death of the performer and the birth of the creator. The old you was driven by the need to arrive. The awakened you understands that there's nowhere to arrive, only moments to live through fully, consciously and honestly. It's easy to mourn the fire that once pushed you forward. But what's dying isn't passion, it's distortion. When the smoke clears, the flame that remains burns cleaner, quieter, purer. It It no longer consumes, it illuminates. You're not unmotivated, you're being rewritten. The old goals served their purpose. They taught you who you were not. And now, what fills that space will not be something you chase. It will be something that calls you. So if you feel detached from everything that once drove you, don't rush to fix it. Sit in the stillness. Let the old motives dissolve. This is how true purpose is revealed, not through effort, but through surrender. Because once you awaken, you no longer live to chase life, you live to embody it. 2. Because you're detoxing from external validation. There was a time when being seen felt like being alive. Every compliment, every bit of approval, every nod of recognition, it fueled you. You measured your worth by the reactions you received, chasing validation as if it were oxygen. And for a while, it worked. Praise kept you moving, achievement kept you shining, and attention gave you meaning. But when awakening arrives, something inside you shifts. The applause that once lifted you now sounds hollow. The praise that once felt like love now feels like noise. The external world, once your mirror, suddenly stops reflecting anything real. You start to sense that the validation you once craved was never nourishment. It was distraction. At first, it's disorienting. When you stop running on external energy, your motivation drops. You begin to wonder if something is wrong with you. Why doesn't approval feel good anymore? Why doesn't success spark the same fire? Why does being seen now feel more like exposure than acceptance? This is what detox feels like, the slow unraveling of the need to be validated by the world. It's not punishment. It's purification. You're learning how to stand without the applause. When you're no longer dependent on recognition, the silence can feel brutal. There's no one left to confirm your worth. No one to remind you that you're enough. You look for the usual reassurance and find only emptiness. But that emptiness isn't absence. It's space. The space where your own voice, long buried beneath the noise of others, begins to rise. At first, that voice is quiet, almost fragile. It doesn't shout or demand attention. It whispers, it guides. It doesn't seek validation. It simply knows. And the more you listen, the more your energy begins to shift from dependency to sovereignty. You start noticing how much of your old life was built around being seen. The subtle ways you shaped yourself to fit expectations. The countless times you softened your truth for approval. The invisible weight of trying to be liked. Awakening exposes the truth. Much of what you thought was authenticity was actually adaptation. And that's when the liberation begins. You stop performing, you stop explaining, you stop chasing the echo of validation that never really filled you. Instead, you start moving from a quieter, deeper place, a place untouched by opinion, unreachable by judgment. You begin to do things because they feel right, not because they'll be noticed. You speak truth even when it's unpopular. You create from essence, not from strategy. And while the world may not always applaud this new version of you, the peace you feel inside is worth more than every ounce of approval you ever received. This is what it means to move from external validation to inner alignment. You no longer ask, do they see me? You ask, am I being true? It's not an easy transition. There will be days when you miss the attention, when you feel unseen and question your worth again. But this time, instead of reaching outward, you'll look inward and find something stronger, steadier, and more real waiting for you. Because once you stop chasing validation, you begin to see that what you were really seeking wasn't recognition, it was resonance. And that resonance begins with you. You realize that silence doesn't mean you've disappeared. It means you've reclaimed your space. And in that quiet, your energy no longer dances for approval. It stands in truth. You become your own source of validation. And from that place, everything you do begins to carry the frequency of freedom. 3. Because your soul is recalibrating, there's a kind of silence that arrives after awakening. A strange, hollow stillness that feels both peaceful and uncomfortable. You stop feeling drawn to the things that once consumed you, yet you haven't found what comes next. It's like standing between worlds, no longer who you were, but not yet who you're becoming. You might call it apathy. You might call it burnout. But it's neither. It's the soul recalibrating. When your vibration shifts, everything built on the old frequency begins to dissolve: goals, habits, even desires. The ambitions that once burned so brightly now feel dim. The urgency to prove yourself fades. What once felt like progress now feels forced. You're no longer driven by the same energies that once defined your identity, and that can feel terrifying. But this stillness isn't a void, it's a cocoon. You are not stuck. You are being restructured from the inside out. Recalibration happens when the soul reclaims the steering wheel from the mind. For so long, your motivation came from logic, ego, and survival. You were running on borrowed energy, chasing versions of success that never truly belonged to you. Awakening disrupts that pattern. It turns down the volume of the world and forces you to listen to something subtler, your own frequency. And the soul, unlike the mind, moves in rhythm, not rush. It doesn't respond to deadlines, pressure, or external noise. It moves in seasons, cycles, and silence. What feels like an action is actually deep rewiring, the quiet rebuilding of your purpose, your energy, and your identity. In this phase, you may lose motivation, interest, or direction. The things that used to excite you no longer hold the same charge. People may label it laziness or detachment, but inside, something sacred is happening. You are being stripped of false desires so that only what's real can remain. You may feel disconnected from your old passions, but that's because those passions were tied to who you thought you were. The soul doesn't create from identity. It creates from essence, and essence needs space to breathe. So the silence isn't punishment, it's preparation. The universe is clearing the noise so you can hear your next calling clearly. The void you're sitting in isn't empty. It's fertile. Something new is forming, but it can't rush to the surface until you stop clinging to what was. It's in this stillness that the soul whispers. The whispers come as subtle impulses, a nudge to simplify, to rest, to read, to wander, to observe. It's not grand or dramatic. It's gentle, quiet, intuitive, and it's easy to overlook because the mind has been trained to look for movement. But the soul speaks in stillness. If you try to fight this phase, if you try to fix your lack of motivation by forcing productivity, you only delay the process. The recalibration requires surrender. You're not meant to push through it. You're meant to dissolve into it. It's a stripping, yes, but it's also a tuning. Every false note in your frequency is being adjusted. Every misplaced desire is being rebalanced. Every external attachment is being released. And when this recalibration completes, something powerful happens. Movement returns, but it feels different. It's lighter, truer. You no longer move from pressure, but from purpose. You no longer act from noise, but from knowing. So if you're in the silence, don't rush it. Don't label it as stagnation. Let yourself float in the space between who you were and who you're becoming. Trust that your stillness is sacred, that it's the space where alignment replaces ambition and where truth replaces striving. Because every time your soul recalibrates, it's not taking something from you, it's returning you to yourself. 4. Because you're tired of playing roles, there comes a point in every awakening when exhaustion sets in, not from doing too much, but from pretending too long. You wake up one morning and realize that you can't keep performing the version of yourself that the world recognizes. The masks you've worn, confident, agreeable, ambitious, begin to crack under the weight of truth. You feel it in conversations that once felt easy but now drain you. You feel it in routines that used to make sense but now feel meaningless. Every role you've played to keep the peace, to gain approval, to belong, suddenly feels like a lie you can't carry anymore. And the deeper the awakening, the heavier the act becomes. You've spent years playing parts. The achiever who never rests, the friend who never says no, the person who smiles while quietly breaking inside. Each role helped you survive in a world that values performance over authenticity. But awakening demands honesty, total, ruthless honesty. And it's here that the fatigue begins. You no longer have the strength to maintain the illusion. This exhaustion isn't weakness, it's a signal. It's the soul whispering, enough. Enough pretending to be what you're not. Enough betraying yourself for validation. Enough shaping yourself into something palatable for others. For a while, this can make you feel lost, because when the roles fall away, so do the identities built around them. You may find yourself asking, who am I without the masks? Who am I when I stop performing? It's an uncomfortable silence, but within that stillness lies your real self, the one who doesn't need an audience to exist. Awakening kills false motivation. You no longer move from should, you move from truth. The things that once drove you, comparison, competition, recognition, lose their meaning. The desire to prove yourself dies alongside the need to be understood. At first, this can make life feel empty. Without the performance, everything slows down. The validation stops. The applause fades. The external momentum dissolves. And in that quiet, you face something raw, the absence of who you were pretending to be. But beneath the rubble of your old identity, something real begins to emerge, a presence that doesn't need to perform to feel worthy, a strength that doesn't need attention to feel powerful, a peace that doesn't need to prove anything to exist. You realize that the exhaustion wasn't from life itself, it was from resisting your own truth. The fatigue came from the constant effort to be everything for everyone. Now you begin to understand that authenticity is not found through effort, but through release. And with that release comes freedom. You stop explaining your silence. You stop defending your boundaries. You stop apologizing for needing solitude or saying no. The energy that was once spent maintaining roles is now redirected toward authenticity, toward being exactly who you are, even when it's misunderstood. This shift scares people who still live behind masks. They'll say you've changed, that you've grown distant or cold. But what they're really sensing is your authenticity, something their illusions can't stand beside without trembling. You are no longer performing to fit into the world. You are reshaping your world to fit your truth. That's not arrogance, that's alignment. And from that place, a new kind of motivation emerges. One not born of pressure or expectation, but of integrity. You begin to act not because you have to, but because it feels right. You speak not to be heard, but because silence would betray your truth. You create not to impress, but to express what's real. You no longer play roles, you live truth. And the moment you do, the fatigue lifts. Because authenticity, unlike performance, doesn't drain you, it restores you. This is where the true energy of the awakened begins to rise again, quiet, grounded, unwavering, not powered by approval, but by essence. 5. Because true motivation is reborn as purpose. There comes a moment in every awakening when you realize motivation was never the goal. What you thought was drive was often just survival, and what you called ambition was sometimes fear dressed in purpose. You chased achievement to feel whole, approval to feel seen, and progress to escape stillness. But once awakening strips away those illusions, what remains is quieter and infinitely more powerful. At first, it feels like loss. The fire that once drove you no longer burns the same way. You look at the old ambitions and feel nothing. The urge to compete, to prove, to impress, it's gone. For a while, you wonder if something inside you has died. But what's really happening is a rebirth, not of motivation, but of meaning. The energy that once rushed outward now turns inward. You begin to realize that true motivation doesn't come from pressure or fear, it comes from presence. It isn't about speed or control. It's about alignment. You move not to chase, but to express. You act not to achieve, but to serve what feels sacred within you. This is the shift from drive to devotion. When your actions align with your soul's rhythm, effort begins to feel like flow. You stop pushing and start allowing. Things unfold with ease because they are rooted in truth, not force. You discover that purpose isn't something you chase down, it's something you uncover in stillness. Something that was waiting beneath the noise all along. And when it arrives, it doesn't roar, it whispers. It doesn't command, it calls. You begin to feel a deep pull toward what nourishes you, what contributes to life, what expands your consciousness. It might not be loud or glamorous. Sometimes purpose looks like quiet consistency. Sometimes it looks like solitude, creation, or healing. You realize that you no longer need recognition to move. The movement itself becomes enough. Each action becomes an offering. Each choice becomes prayer. Each day becomes a dialogue between you and the divine intelligence guiding your path. This is why awakened motivation feels different. It's not about outcome, it's about alignment. You stop asking, what can I get from this? And start asking, what can I give through this? The energy you once spent proving your worth now fuels your expression of it. And that expression changes everything. Your presence begins to carry weight. Not the heavy kind that demands attention, but the grounded kind that inspires it. People sense something steady in you, something uncheckable. Because when your purpose comes from the soul, no external chaos can disturb it. This kind of motivation doesn't need hype or deadlines. It's not driven by caffeine, competition, or comparison. It moves on intuition and timing, effortlessly, precisely. It doesn't rush because it knows it's eternal. In the silence of awakening, this purpose is born. A quiet devotion to truth, creation, and service. You begin to live not to succeed, but to align. You no longer wake up asking, "What do I have to do today?" You ask, "What wants to move through me today?" And when you follow that whisper, life starts aligning around you. Opportunities appear without chasing. People arrive without seeking. Paths open without pushing. Because when you move from purpose, you move in harmony with the current of existence itself. True motivation is not a spark, it's a pulse. It's steady, consistent, alive. It doesn't need to shout. It simply is. When you reach this space, you realize that you never lost motivation. You just outgrew the kind that was borrowed. What returns is not the noisy hunger of ego, but the sacred rhythm of soul, quiet, patient, and unstoppable. You no longer live to chase meaning. You become it. When the fire of old motivation dies, it feels like the end of everything. You lose the urgency, the drive, the familiar spark that once defined your momentum. But what's really happening is far more profound. Your energy is being purified. The false fuel of ego is burning away, leaving only what's real. You stop chasing applause. You stop performing for belonging. You stop mistaking movement for meaning. In that stillness, you face a truth most never dare to see. The only drive worth keeping is the one that comes from within, from the quiet knowing that your existence itself carries purpose. Spiritual awakening doesn't take your motivation away. It transforms it. The chase becomes calm. The striving becomes service. The pressure becomes presence. You stop running toward life and begin moving with it. Everything you do begins to feel intentional, less about outcomes, more about alignment. It's not an easy transition. There will be days when the silence feels unbearable, when your stillness feels like failure. But stay there. Don't rush back to the noise. What you're feeling is your old identity dissolving, making space for the truth of who you are and why you're really here. Because once the ego's hunger fades, the soul's devotion awakens. And that is the kind of motivation that never runs out. If this phase speaks to you, if you're in the quiet, waiting for something real to return, trust it. Your purpose is not lost. It's being reborn. Subscribe for more reflections like this and share your experience in the comments, because somewhere another soul is walking through the same silence, waiting to remember that this stillness is transformation.